Well, welcome everyone to this webcast. It's about PuMP's role through change, and it's about how to use PuMP to cope with massive change instead of doing what we always tend to do, which is delay measurement until everything is easy and back to normal. Now, in case you haven't met me before or you're not too familiar with what I do, my name is Stacey Barr. I'm a performance measure specialist, and I am the creator of a methodology known as PuMP, which is possibly the world's only full and deliberate approach to performance measurement. So PuMP has evolved with my experience and learning with all the organizations I've worked with since the mid-1990s, and also with the experience and learning from my regional PuMP partners around the world as well, one of which is hosting with me today. I'll bring Peter in just a moment. But today, PuMP has become an 8-step process. It's supported by practical techniques and templates, and it is a tool to help you measure the performance of anything. And it does this in a way that engages people. It brings meaning to measurement, and it brings insight to performance improvement. Later in this webcast, you'll see what the 8 steps of PuMP are, just briefly, but enough to get an appreciation for it. And like I mentioned, with me today as my co-host is my regional PuMP partner for Africa, Peter Nda. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to have you with us on the webcast. I am a strategy execution specialist, and in my work, I integrate PuMP with strategy execution approaches, including strategic management systems based on the Balance Scorecard, like the Balance Scorecard Institute's 9 steps to success, to help organizations seamlessly implement their strategies. Currently, I am experimenting on how to integrate PuMP with the polarity approach to change and transformation. Perhaps some of you might be familiar with it. I am the founder of BC, which is a management consulting company based in Nairobi, Kenya, that offers training and consulting services on strategic performance management, KPIs, and polarity management. BC, as Stacey said, is a partner of Stacey Barr and Polarity Partnerships, which is an organization co-founded by Barry Johnson, a thought leader in polarity management.
I love the polarity management work, and for our PuMP community, Peter and his colleague Jerry did a little presentation on how we can integrate PuMP with polarity. So I'm pretty excited to see how that experimenting goes, Peter, too, as you continue it into the future.
Yeah.
So everyone, most organizations go through massive change at some point. I'm sure you agree with that. And when they do, often the people and the resources and time available to the organization can suddenly get exhausted and overwhelmed. Now, the natural response is to just stop doing the things that aren't urgent. And for many, better performance measurement is not seen as urgent. Now, even though most people will agree that it's important, I hope you agree that it's important, I guess you do because you're here with us now, measurement is still one of the first things that gets delayed until the change settles down. But it's an oxymoron because we cannot cope well with change unless we have 3 mechanisms that only come from better performance measurement. Of course, there's more to successful change than these 3 mechanisms that we'll explore together, but these 3 mechanisms particularly only come from performance measurement. Now, most of us have faced more change than ever before through this pandemic era, and as we all know with news over recent weeks, the world's becoming even more unsettled with what's happening in Eastern Europe. So Peter and I hope that our time with you today will give you some practical ideas from the PuMP approach to performance measurement that can make change easier to cope with and more likely to succeed. So a few things that we'll cover together now. well, what the pump approach is to performance measurement. We'll do that just briefly, and we'll do that actually a little bit further into the webcast, just so that you've got enough context around what pump is and the three tips that we're going to share with you. And so that's the other thing that we'll cover in this webcast is the three mechanisms of pump that are vital to successfully navigating through massive change. Also want to give you a really useful set of questions, 5 powerful questions, in fact, that you can take from pump to start right away taking more control over the changes in your organisation. We also hope that you'll see why you should learn the 8 steps of pump now, all of them, even though we're going to recommend you only implement 3 of them when you're going through massive change.
When change is exhausting and overwhelming, as it often is, that last thing we should do is delay the one thing that will bring the clarity and alignment we need to get through that change. But we don't want to convince you today to put better performance measurement at the top of your list of change initiatives. Our hope is that you can see how to integrate, or rather, you can see how integrating just a few of the important parts of better performance measurement can make all the changes more successful. So, are you here because your organization is going through a lot of change too?
Be really interesting to know that. I'm assuming that you're going through some change because you've joined us on the webcast, but let me launch a poll just to ask you, how much change is your organization going through right now? Here comes the poll now. You should see it on your webcast control panel. So just pick the response that best suits where you think your organization is right now with change. Are you going through much more than normal, like before the pandemic, for example? Is it just a bit more than normal before the pandemic, or is it about the same as it's always been? Maybe you're in a lucky situation where you've got less change than normal, or are you having like almost none at the moment? So I'll give you a few moments more to respond to that poll. All you have to do is just click one of those buttons. I can see about a third of you have voted so far, so I'll give you a bit more time. It's all anonymous, by the way, so if you vote, we have got no idea who's voting for what, but I do want to share the results with you. So the more of you that participate, the more interesting I think we'll all find the results. A little bit more time. If you haven't yet voted, go right ahead and click. No, that looks like we're going to have only 40% of you have voted, so I'm not quite sure how representative these results will be of all of you. If you're having any trouble participating in the polls, just let us know in the questions box and we'll see if we can help you out with that. I'll close the poll now and just share with you the results that we can see so far. So Peter, looking at these results, everybody's got more change than they had before the pandemic started. A little bit more than half are much more than normal, and the rest are just more than normal. What's your reaction to that? Does it surprise you?
Well, not at all, not at all, especially with what's going on in the world today. I think we are in constant state of change.
Do you think there are any particular changes that are affecting African countries now since the pandemic that might not have been affecting before?
Yeah, I think one of the major changes now is on cost of living, especially with the war in Ukraine. I think fuel prices have really gone up across Africa, and therefore, goods, foodstuffs, etc. Everything just going up, and I think that's what organizations are grappling in, the cost of power, energy, because I think there are a lot of countries that depend on fuel or diesel generated energy or thermal energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there must be a lot of changes going on at the moment, or a lot of uncertainty in the world at the moment.
Yeah, it's crazy times. It can be really unsettling. Okay, so yes, you are here because you are dealing with a lot of change, and no doubt are curious to explore how measurement might be able to help a little bit with that. So, I think one thing that you'll find very useful, especially when you're talking with your colleagues and leaders about measurement in relation to change, is to reframe it a little bit. So for example, to many people, better performance measurement, it feels like just another change that the organization has to make. But that's not necessarily how it is. Hey, Peter.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And your leaders and colleagues might believe that better measurement is just, as State says, another change project. And if they already have more change than they can bear, then of course, better measurement is going to be delayed. Um, uh, People always feel measurement is not the most important thing, especially when there's a lot of uncertainty and change in the organization. It will feel like one more thing being poured into an already overwhelming work program. But is better measurement really another change project? Yes, indeed it is. If you frame it as a complete rollout of an entirely new approach to performance measurement, like adopting PuMP organization-wide. For some organizations, this is important enough for them to include better measurement as one of the priority change initiatives. But for many others, it's not useful to see better measurement as its own change initiative. If change is already overwhelming, it's much more useful and valuable to see better measurement not as a change, but as a tool. So we can reframe better measurement as a tool to help with our existing change program, as the tool to make three things happen that are vitally important to the success of any change initiative that you may be going through.
Let's we'll dive into these three vital pieces that only measurement can provide. But first, let's just state an assumption, I guess, that we're probably making here. And that assumption is that all of the changes that are going on in your organization, all the changes that your organization has committed to, it actually wants to succeed at them. And successful changes create the results that they were designed to create. And hopefully they create those results at a cost that was well worth it. In other words, they're designed and they're executed in a way that brings a positive return on investment. So to succeed at any change, sure, we do need a project plan. We need the right skills. We need enough money and enough time and all of those things. But where many initiatives fall down is with three other vital pieces that tend not to be spoken about too often. And the first one of these three is the articulation of results. We need to start any change initiative with specific, clear, and observable results that the change should produce. But too often, we start with vague, broad, intangible goals for the change. The thing is, if we're not clear about the results that the change should produce, then the risk of producing the wrong results or no results at all is really too high. Now, as it turns out, the thinking process that we use in PuMP to design good measures, it actually forces us to first be ultra clear about the results that we want from each change. And specifically, how we would recognize those results happening in the real world. So for example, if we had a digital transformation initiative, maybe we originally write the result to be improved productivity. That's what we want from the digital transformation. But that's not actually good enough. Like, what does productivity really look like in the organization? How would you be convinced that it was happening? So we need to write a clearer result, and maybe something like the lag time in workflows is eliminated is a much more specific example of what the organisation wants from this change. So articulation of results, that's the first vital piece that only measurement can provide to the success of change. And I'm curious, how well are your change results articulated? So again, let's try this in a poll. Are the change initiatives in your organisation very clear about the results they were designed to create or improve? You know, we want this so that everyone can have a shared understanding of what they're going to contribute to. So how much clarity does everyone in your organisation have about the results that the current changes that you've got going on are supposed to produce? So again, participate in this poll. Just pick the answer that best suits. Do you find that just about everyone's clear about what the changes should be producing right now? Or are maybe not everyone, but many people are clear? Or are you finding that some might be clear about the change results, but there are still a good deal of them that are confused or unaware? Or are you finding that many people are confused or unaware of what the changes are supposed to be doing? Or is just about everyone confused or unaware? Okay, we've got just over a third of you have voted in the poll so far, so I'll give you a little bit more time. Just click the response that you think best suits your organisation at this point. I can see people are still joining the webcast. It's great to have you. If you didn't happen to make it in here when we began, the replay will be available for you to catch up on within about a day or so. We'll send you a link for that. So just over 40% of you have voted. I'll give you a few more seconds. I think, Peter, we've got maybe a tired audience today. Usually we'll get about 90% of our participants voting, so or maybe everyone's just curious and about what everybody else will say. But that's about it. 45% of you have voted and no more, so I'll close the poll now and share the results with you. And again, Peter, I'll be interested in your reaction to these to see if you're surprised in any way. So I think we've got probably 90% of people saying that at least half or more of people are confused about the results of change.
Indeed, that's not surprising a lot at all. When you look at organizations, let's say strategies, which is all about change. You look at the results of the objectives that they're pursuing. You realize they're not that clear, and they could be confusing to many people in the organization, especially because of the language that is being used. It's not very specific here.
And that's the key. It's not that we don't know what the changes should be or the results should be from change. It's that we probably haven't articulated or written them clearly enough. So clear and specific articulation or writing of results is a vital piece of change success, and good measurement practice can bring that to your change programs. So Peter, let's go on to the second vital piece.
All right, the second one is the ownership of results, and thereby a commitment to achieve those results. We need to have strong ownership and focus for the execution of each change initiative. Otherwise, then it's unlikely to succeed. But it can be too easy to just assume everyone is committed to the project plan. And without ownership and focus, time and money will be wasted on things that don't really directly contribute to the goals of the change. So the team that designs the measures for the change will develop stronger ownership for its results and strong focus on achieving those results as they execute the change. For example, the teams that work in the departments most affected by a digital transformation initiative will have more ownership of the change if they help create the measures of that change. And even more ownership when they align those change results and measures to other strategic outcomes of the organization. The dialogue required to do this helps them understand and very tangibly exactly what is wanted from the change that is being the desired change. And there's one more vital piece that better measurement contributes to the success of changes. And the third piece, the third one is objective feedback. That is the ability to see clearly exactly how well the results are being achieved. We need to start out with objective and direct measures of the results we want from each change. And then, if we don't, we miss out on the kind of feedback that helps the implementation team learn quickly what works and what doesn't work before it's too late. The measures we design for each change directly help us monitor if the change is working, both throughout and after the change. For example, for the digital transformation initiative, we could measure a result like lag time in workflows is eliminated. And by measuring it before we start the program, we get a baseline to measure the overall impact of the change. And by measuring it throughout the implementation of the digital initiative, we can quickly see if the way we are digitizing the workflow is, in fact, starting to save any time at all. And at the end, we can compare the value of the total time savings to the cost of the digital program and know for sure the impact the change has had. Let's quickly recap these three vital pieces that measurements contribute to the success of change.
Yeah, let's do that. So the first one was the articulation of results. Good measurement contributes to change initiatives. A better way for how the results are articulated. And that's because good measurement forces us to describe the specific, clear, and observable results that each change is supposed to produce. And we do that in PuMP because we want to be able to measure them meaningfully, so we have to be able to make them clear and observable. Without this, we can never know if the return from the change was worth the investment. Now, the second vital piece that only measurement can provide to change is this ownership of results. Good measurement involves the people who are implementing the change to find measures for that change, and the process to go through coming up with those measures, we always see that creates very high ownership, not only of the measures but of even more ownership of the results of the change. If we don't do this, we end up wasting too much time and effort and money on an activity that really doesn't help the change do what it's supposed to do. Then the third vital piece that measurement gives to change is objective feedback, which is really the fundamental purpose of measurement anyway. Good measurement directly helps us measure the results or the impact of each change, along with the return on investment in each change. And without that, we can't ever learn how to get better at leveraged improvement. In other words, improvement that is significant compared to what it takes to get that improvement to happen. But at the same time, we also can't learn how to be more efficient and effective in how we execute change. But a complete and proper performance measurement process, I mean, these are just three parts of a proper performance measurement process, but a complete one will achieve much more than just these three things. So Peter, do you want to walk us through PuMP?
Yeah. PuMP is a proper performance measurement process, and when we say proper, we mean it's the only measurement process that shows you how to develop and implement your measures. It's not about what to do, and it has 8 deliberate steps. Step 1 of PuMP: make sure the entire measurement team understand enough about what good measurement practice is in order to participate fully in that process. in the measurement process. Step 2, make sure that the goals or results we want to achieve are written clearly and measurably. Step 3 of PuMP takes those measurable results one at a time and finds the measures that are the strongest and most feasible evidence to monitor those results. When you say feasible, it means you can bring those measures to life economically and quickly. Step 4 checks the results and measures with the broader community of stakeholders in a fun and engaged, an organic way to make sure they're as good as they can be. In other words, getting buy-in from the rest of your colleagues and other stakeholders of those measures. Step 5 details the implementation for each measure, from its calculation to the data needed to bring that measure to life. Step 6 puts the measures into spatial graphs, which we call them XMR graphs, that clearly show signals of shifts or changes in performance over time. And step 7 adds to those signals of change some extra analysis about the causes of the performance and recommended action to keep performance on track. And step 8 puts all this information to use to either create new change initiatives or tweak existing change initiatives to find the best leverage to reach the results. So if your organization had better performance measurement as a change initiative in and of itself, you'll be fully implementing all these 8 steps. However, if your organization is overwhelmed by change, you can still take a few of the great techniques from PuMP and bring them into each change project to get those 3 vital pieces we have just explored. For instance, from step 2, you can use the measurability tests to make each change initiative results clear and specific. This means we get rid of WYSIWYG language, complexity, and too much action focus. Also from step 2, we use the results map to link your change results to other strategically important results for the organization. The map is a diagram that shows the cause-effect linkages from our change programs to the direct results that they produce, and then with a line of sight through to the most strategic outcomes. From step 3, use measure design to create the measures that directly align to each change result. This technique guides us to turn the direct evidence of our change program results into measures of those results we can feel excited about. That is the results that we want our change to produce. It is important to involve the people who will execute the change and some people affected by the change in the teams that will do this. And remember, it won't take much time. You don't have to do it perfectly, but you'll give your change initiative a better chance of succeeding and save them from wasting time and resources and human energy. Now, following this webcast, we'll email you more details about each of these techniques in PuMP that you can start integrating into your change projects. I wonder which of them you may be most interested to try.
Let's find out. So let me launch our final poll, which is, really to find out which, or maybe you're interested in trying all of these three vital things that we've shared with you to help with your change projects, or maybe just one of them, or maybe two of them, but pick as many as apply. Are you most interested in finding out how to articulate the results that you really want from changes in a clear way? Or are you most interested to see how you can help people understand how they align to the changes? Or maybe you're interested in how to create proxy evidence to monitor the results of your changes. Now, proxy evidence, what I mean there is just the simple measures that will be the quickest and easiest to start with, because you're already overwhelmed with change, so you don't want to find the perfect measures. As Peter said before, we're not aiming for perfection, we just want to make some good progress. And sometimes finding a proxy measure, a measure that's useful enough, even though it might not be perfect, that can be all you need to get started. So let's see, we've got just over a third of you have voted. There's our magic 40%. See if we can get any higher this time. I'll give you a little bit longer to pick one or more of those that you're more interested to play with. And part of the reason for asking you to think about this now is that, as Peter said, we're going to email you 3 articles that will dive deeper into each of those 3 points there. And you'll want to know which of those articles you'll most want to read. Okay, let me close the poll and share the results with you. So Peter, it seems like most people are interested in that second bit about helping people see how they can align to the changes. Next most is getting those clear results articulated, and then lastly finding some good proxy measures. I had actually expected that articulating the results was going to come out higher than the next one. What did you have an expectation of which one people would be most interested in?
Actually, yes, the first one actually is what I had expected, but I think naturally you find the issue of alignment. I think is talks more to a lot of people because lots happens in organizations in terms of changes and communication of that change and getting people to understand so that they can align themselves is always an issue. So people feel left out from change initiatives, and perhaps that's why we have that the second one there
Yeah.
ranking highest. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And for those of you who did select the second one, helping people see how they align, but you didn't select the first one, can I suggest to you that you consider doing both of them? Because the clearer you can write the results, the easier it's going to be to help people see how they align to the change. Would you agree with that, Pete?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone for participating in that and sharing your thoughts with us. Now, we are going to email you some articles to dive more deeply into each of those 3 vital pieces, the pump-inspired tactics, if you like, to help you with your change. But right now, let me share with you 5 simple questions that I think you could try as conversation starters to start warming people up to how measurement can help with change. Now, I've got a little picture of a camera there. Once I've shared all of these 5 questions with you, you may want to take a screenshot or take a photograph of it so that you've got these questions handy immediately to start using in your conversations. These questions are great to test if your change initiative is ready for success, or if you need to bring one or more of those pump techniques into that change project. And the first question is, how would we explain to a 10-year-old what the impact of this change initiative should be? Now, that's not about making it sound dumb by making it appropriate for a 10-year-old. The thing is, a lot of our workforce has 10-year-old literacy skills. So what this does is it helps us use words that everyone can understand. And when they can understand that, they understand that that impact is going to be more easily measurable. So that's question 1. Question 2 is, why is this impact important? So what other strategically important outcomes does it help us achieve? Now, this helps us align the change the activity of the change and its results to what matters most, and that makes it easier for people to see how they can connect to it. Question 3 that you might want to play with is, what would we see or touch or hear around us in the real world that would convince us and convince every other stakeholder that the change's impact happened successfully? So evidence is the foundation of good measures. Measures quantify evidence so that we can track how much or how often it's happening over time. And those questions there, what would you see or touch or hear around you that would convince you that what you're really asking for there is, what is the evidence that would convince you the change was working? Question 4 is, how could we quantify the most convincing of this evidence to be able to track it over time? So this is what I meant before about easy proxy measures. They can be your starting point. It's really great practice, and it's likely going to be better than nothing and better than poor measures that just count how much action you're doing in the change or how many milestones you're meeting. You want to quantify something about the evidence that the change is working. Question 5 is one you may not want to ask. You've got to be careful if you want to ask this question. Question 5 is, are we prepared to know the truth about the change initiative, even if we found out it's not working? Now, one of the unspoken truths about delaying better measurement for some people is that they just don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know whether the change is working or not. They just want to know that the change got done. So be very careful to avoid pushing measurement into a place where it's really not welcome, because people are fearful of the truth. So be very careful when you ask that question and who you ask that question of. But it can be a provocative question if you're having trouble getting people to articulate what are the results of the change. So now's your chance. Take a screenshot or a snapshot of this slide so that you can keep the questions handy and use them when the opportunity presents itself. Your next opportunity to get access to these questions is when you watch the replay. So use these questions to warm your colleagues up to thinking about their change initiatives in a measurable way. And instead of delaying better measurement because of too much change going on, use it with these questions to make the existing change initiatives succeed. And to do this, we really want you to come and learn PuMP. We want you to know what you're doing. And then as you slowly introduce the 3 parts that we're focused on today, which came out of steps 2 and 3 of PuMP, if you know all of PuMP, you'll be well prepared for your colleagues when they want more. So Peter, can you share with us how people can learn PuMP with you?
Sure. In our PuMP Blueprint training programs, you will systematically learn each step of PuMP. You'll learn and practice each new technique. You'll see how the corresponding template or tool makes it practical and collaborative. You'll also have real examples to follow, to provide examples of how others have done it. We also go beyond case studies. We give time and coaching to help you apply PuMP steps to measure your own real life goals. When you go back to work, you will know what to do, how to do it, and where to find support for deeper dives. We also provide a free silver membership in our PuMP community for exclusive case studies, how-to tips, and exclusive webcasts. So you can learn the PuMP Blueprint live in these ways. 1, at one of our live public training workshops in Africa. If you go into that link there, you'll be able to see our upcoming programs. 2, by hosting your own private in-house workshop exclusively with your colleagues. Or 3, contacting me if you'd like more information about how we can help you with this better performance measurement and evidence-based leadership. My address is there, pinda@b sea.org. So before we wrap up, are there any unanswered questions you still have about PUMP?
So everyone, please do type in any questions that you have about the webcast today or about PUMP using the questions box, and we'll spend a bit of time answering them before we wrap up. Now, we did get a few questions in advance, so how about we start with those, Peter? Dennis has asked,
Sure.
how responsive is PuMP in reacting to the rapidly changing business environment? We are still recovering from the effects of COVID and now have the invasion of Ukraine and the massive effect it's having to global business environment. So how responsive is PuMP in reacting to that? Do you have any thoughts you want to share first, Peter, before I do?
I think you can go ahead.
So, whoops, I've just lost my screen. Hang on, there we go. PuMP is a thinking tool. I think that's probably the first thing to realize. And because it's a thinking tool, it speeds up your ability to think about what the important results are and how to measure them. So as things change rapidly, you need to be able to think faster about what really matters, what you should have your attention on. Your systems will be the constraint, though, on how fast you can get data for any new measures relating to rapid changes. But even if you can't get the data fast enough, just thinking through the important results the PuMP way, so that you're very clear about them, that will dramatically increase your ability to communicate a clear direction to everyone so that they can align their efforts to actions that matter. Peter, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think when we are going through change, lots of times we focus on the activities that we are doing rather than the outcomes that we desire. And I think PuMP forces one to have clarity of outcomes and know that change will most likely affect your processes, your systems, rather than the results that you want to achieve. So clarity of results is very important. Articulating the results is very, very important when you're going through change.
Yeah, brilliant. I hope that helps, Dennis. Anita's got a very, I think, a very general question. Peter, I think we could answer this in any number of ways. How do you manage KPIs? So it's a big question. From your experience, Peter, what would be your top 3 tips for someone who's really unsure about how to manage KPIs?
Right. I think the first thing about managing KPIs is to have clarity about your KPIs in terms of the definition of your KPIs, specifying all the aspects of your KPIs. I think that's very, very important, because if it's not specified in terms of the calculations, the signals you're looking from it, how to analyze that KPI. So if that's not clear, then it's very difficult to manage your KPI. So I would say defining your KPI, having clarity, make sure it's well defined is very, very important. And then the next thing is about to manage your KPI, I think is about knowing whether the KPI is giving you the right feedback. So collecting data, analyzing, and seeing whether that feedback is as you expected or giving the right feedback is very, very, very important in terms of managing KPIs. And of course, the last but not least, reporting on that KPI, because if you have a KPI, it's supposed to provide feedback that is useful, usable, and actionable, and therefore being able to communicate that feedback to the people who need to use it and them acting on it, then that's very important. It helps you manage that KPI and keeping it alive so that it's used and creates value for the organization.
I like those, Pete. I think that's really practical, and they're things that Anita could do immediately. In the maybe not the longer term, maybe the medium term, but once you've started playing with those 3 tips that Peter's given you, Anita, I would say the next step is to start thinking about what is your performance measurement process? What is your end-to-end process for how you create and implement and use KPIs? And that's what PuMP is an example of, an end-to-end performance measurement process. So if you haven't adopted PuMP yet, maybe that's the way to go, but definitely look at your end-to-end process, because to manage KPIs, you need a process. I think we've got one more question here from Grace, who asks, how does one influence performance measurement from the current method? Peter, do you think Grace means how do you influence performance measurement based on how it's currently being done, or do you interpret the question a little bit differently?
Yeah, I wasn't so sure what my current method means, and I wondered whether that meant pump.
Yeah.
And as you answered Anita's question, I thought you had answered this, because in my view, I thought current method, I thought that's referring to pump. So if it's that, then I believe what you say, having an end-to-end process is very important. But
Yeah.
if it's current method in terms of what the organization is using, um, then that brings another conversation altogether. Yeah,
Yeah, and
because yeah,
if
yes,
that's
go
the
ahead,
case,
Cecily.
Peter, if it is like looking at moving away from what you're already using, one tip I would have, Grace, is to, and you'll find this on my blog, measureupblog.com. If you search for maturity score, I think might be good keywords, there'll be a framework for how to evaluate your current performance measurement method and work out where it needs to be improved and where it's already strong enough, and that might be a way to influence the way performance measurement's being done at the moment. Okay, well, I think we're ready to wrap up, Peter. So everyone, we hope you end up deciding to join our PuMP community soon by taking the training with Peter. And Peter, thanks so much for your insights today.
Thank you, thank you. Now, when PuMP is used as a tool to measure the impact of change, it gives objective evidence that change is truly happening. So all you need to do is to use the relevant PuMP steps to articulate your results, develop KPIs, set baselines, and track performance over time. So thank you, and I hope to see you all soon at our next PuMP workshop. You can visit our website. We got some upcoming programs.
Brilliant. We'll send these links to you as well, everybody. It's been great having you all join us today. Remember, if you've got any further questions, you can email PuMP head office, I guess, info@staceybarr.com, or if you want to learn directly from Peter, then pndar@bc.org, just as it says on the slide there. Until next time, bye everybody.